Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. My name is Emma, and we're going to be diving into the ideas behind the ecosystem that we're all hearing so much about in the enterprise world today. But before we get started, can you give everybody an introduction?
Absolutely. Hey, Emma, thanks for having me. So I'm Avanish Sahai. I'm a retired enterprise software executive and have worked in the tech sector for a long time and worked at companies like Oracle, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and I'm also on the board of Hubspot and focus on the strategy around platforms and ecosystems. And so delighted to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So, I always like to level set at the beginning of these discussions before we dive into the why an ecosystem is something that buyers should be looking for. Can you start with a definition and kind of share what that term means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an evolving term, to be candid. So a lot of us have focused on partnerships, right? And partnerships have been a core part of the tech world for a long time, but they tend to be one-to-one, right? Hey, I've got a set of delivery partners. I may have some technology partners. I may have a reseller or a set of resellers in certain markets. The term ecosystem is becoming more and more prominent. And the idea is if you're a vendor, if you're a, let's say, platform company, like maybe a Salesforce or a ServiceNow or an Atlassian in the enterprise space, you really are a platform. And around that platform, you're aggregating services companies, technology companies, resellers, maybe managed service providers, MSPs, and you're trying to make them all work together. And that's really what we think of as an ecosystem is no longer these kind of siloed relationships, but more how do all these things come and work together, bring more of a point of view of it's not a no longer a one-to-one relationship, it's orchestrating multiple relationships to really then, most importantly, solve key customer problems.
So, as organizations are making their purchasing decisions,
Mhm.
why do you feel like looking for a solution that has this ecosystem approach is valuable for them?
Yeah, look, companies in general are looking to solve complex business problems, right? Particularly in the enterprise space. And when they choose a vendor, or as they often call it, a strategic vendor or strategic partner, they understand that they're not solving just one problem. They're trying to solve a more complex business problem, a set of different workflows, and so on. So the reason to pick a company or a strategic vendor, excuse me, that has this notion of an ecosystem is that by choosing them, you're actually really getting access to multiple players who can probably work very well together, who can seamlessly integrate from a technology perspective, and therefore they can solve a broader set of problems, right? So if you're the buyer inside an enterprise, you're making that decision to say, hey, I'm going to have typically a small handful, three, four, five, maybe key strategic technology partners. And if each of them brings with them their ecosystem, they can actually help me solve. As I evolve my relationship, as I identify new problem areas, I can actually leverage that relationship with my strategic vendors to add things and add solutions and add capabilities to solve and evolve in my digital transformation. And I know that's a big part of what you focus on. And those tend to be meaty, complex problems that no single vendor can solve everything, right? So now you have a way to address more complex business problems.
I think that last sentence that you said is no one solution provider can solve all of your problems is a
Yeah.
really important concept to bring forward because oftentimes you'll see requests for proposals or things that come out that are almost seeking that ecosystem mentality, but looking for it in one platform rather than realizing that you have to probably have multiple solutions, but if you can expedite the integrations and make that interaction between all of those platforms more seamless, you're going to end up with what your desired business outcome was, but maybe with a couple of partners that are helping you accomplish that.
That's exactly right. And I think one, obviously, there's a kind of an imperative to be more efficient, right? So you don't want to throw a lot of resources at saying, I'm going to try to solve everything with very siloed point solutions. Because then you're creating the spaghetti that has existed in so many different ways. And it becomes really hard to maintain that, to evolve that, to again expand to other areas. So the ability to say, hey, this is again, it's a bit of a strategic technology decision. If I pick a set of partners or vendors who already come with this mindset, then that integration becomes easier. I probably will have, and this is a really important point, I'm expecting them to have done some kind of, frankly, selection or curation of who are those partners that work well together, right? So if I'm in a particular industry, they understand my business, my goals, my change requirements, etc. And that again drives an imperative of speed and knowledge of my industry and my company that again will drive probably faster and better business outcomes.
So, to round out our time together, you don't have to name names, but can you
Okay.
give us a real world example of how moving forward with this ecosystem approach to IT organizations has helped some customers, or I guess organizations, manage their transformations?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch, and it's always fun to bring it to life, right? So I'll give an example from my days at ServiceNow. I won't name the customer, but they're a very large, very well-known retailer in the home services and construction space. Global footprint, they were an early adopter of ServiceNow to manage their IT infrastructure. And those of you who know ServiceNow, that's what ServiceNow has been known for, right? It's a phenomenal form to manage your IT assets, right? Your servers, your desktops, your mobile devices, etc., right? Geeky stuff, but there's a lot of it out there and it has to be managed. But this particular customer, once they adopted ServiceNow and really liked the capabilities of the product and the platform and how easy it was to manage the relationships among those IT assets and so on, their CIO basically said, you know what? My bigger problem, this is a big problem you're solving for me, but my organization and my peers who run these mega stores around the country, around the US, they also need to manage those facilities. These are huge facilities with a lot of equipment, big size, etc. They're not part of my IT stack, or they're not part of my IT assets, but I still need to manage those. And we've got a arcane homegrown system to manage these facilities. Do you do that? And frankly, the answer was we at the time, ServiceNow, did not do that. But we had a partner, a third party, that was part of our ecosystem. And they worked with a large system integrator. And we said, look, we don't have a solution for that, but we have a partner who actually has built their solution. It's called Novolo. It's built on the ServiceNow platform. And they actually focus on, in fact, facilities. And they'll work seamlessly with your IT assets. It's a very similar interface, similar way to design the interactions and so on. Would you like to meet them? Turns out we made the connections. They saw what the partner did plus what ServiceNow did. And that was a bit of a aha moment for them, right? Which is I had chosen ServiceNow for a particular purpose. I knew I could expand my use cases and how it would bring more value. And this was a great example of where the CIO in this case was again addressing the needs of the broader organization. Remember, they're in the home services space, they're a large retailer. That is their business. IT is not their business. IT supports their business. But to be able to then include this big physical plant of all their locations and infrastructure and frankly manage it in a much more seamless fashion was a huge win. And between us, since I didn't name names, I can say this, the deal with Novolo was actually bigger than the deal with ServiceNow. So you had a way of really expanding the relationship and really proving that the platform strategy that ServiceNow had, plus its ecosystem, were bringing more value to a mega customer like.
Thank you so much for joining me for the discussion. And I Would encourage everybody, if you're not already, make your way over to Avanish's LinkedIn. He's been putting a lot of really great content out there. We knew each other before, but we also both just graduated from the accelerator program with LinkedIn. Got a newsletter, lots of great content if you're interested in this topic to learn more about it. But thank you again for your time today, and thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Leading Change. If you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe and come back weekly for more expert interviews on digital transformation, change management, and emerging technologies.